Hi, guys.
Hey,
Hi, everyone.
Well,
Hi, Instagram Live audience. I'm now delightfully joined by both Donna Conlon and Jonathan Harker, artistic duo. We'll get the PowerPoint back online shortly. But in the meantime, this is our In the Studio series. My name is Rachel Remick. I'm an assistant curator at American Society of Visual Arts. I'm delighted to welcome you to this program that's presented in conjunction with our current exhibition, Tropical is Political, Caribbean Art Under the Visitor Economy Regime. And so Donna and Jonathan, two of their videos are included in that show. So if you're in New York, we invite you to stop by. And I'll just have our PowerPoint screen mute so we don't get that echo. Okay, I think we're good now. So, Donna and Jonathan, if you'll indulge me, I will read your bio so everyone can know a bit more about your work and your accomplishments. So if you'll bear with me.
those are the short versions, right?
Yes, it's so much
Yeah.
Okay. Donna Conlon and Jonathan Harker have been collaborating since 2006. Their videos playfully comment on national identity, mass consumerism, climate, and social behavior. They have shown their collaborations in exhibitions at Another Space New York, Cadis San Francisco, Prospect 4, New Orleans, Pacific Standard Time, LA, and Los Angeles, and at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum. Their work is included in the collections of the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum, the Tate Modern, Queensland Gallery of Modern Art, Cadis Art Foundation, Centro Gallego de Arte Contemporáneo, and the Patricia Phelps de Cisneros collection in the Museum of Art, Lima. With Casa Santa Ana, they lead Voces en Acción, a workshop for emerging artists in Panama centered on experimentation, constructive criticism, and community building. So welcome, Donna and Jonathan. Welcome to Instagram Live.
Hey,
Thank you for joining us.
thank you. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No,
I've done it once, and Donna, this is her first time. She's a newbie.
I made it through 2020 and 2021 and a lot of 2022 without having to do an Instagram Live.
We were the first people to drag you onto Instagram Live, so we appreciate your willingness.
And who would have known you had to be on your phone?
Yeah, no worries. First question, just to get us started. So how did the two of you meet and begin working together?
You want to take that one up?
Sure. I mean, we've kind of repeated a few times that we started working together by accident, but it's really pretty true. I took Jonathan recycling, and that's where it all started. I was going to this recycling plant. I don't know if you've got the pictures there on your PowerPoint that might illustrate the story. But I was going to this recycling plant outside of Panama City because at that point we only had economic recycling. There was no sort of organized recycling like there's a little bit of now. And so I was going to this place that you see in the slide there with my glass bottles and stuff and taking pictures that are part of a series called Synthetic Landscapes. And I had just met Jonathan really recently, but something definitely had clicked, and I invited him to come with me recycling because I thought he would appreciate the aspects of this place that I was appreciating. It was pretty special to see mountains of glass in front of the actual mountains, and I just thought Jonathan might dig it. So he came with me and brought his camera.
I brought a video camera. Donna was taking photos.
I was taking photos, which we have. I think the next picture on the slideshow is one of the photos of the series that I was working on at the time. So I was just framing this landscape in a way to make it sort of relate to the language of landscape photography or landscape painting. And Jonathan, being Jonathan, sets the camera on the glass and starts throwing bottles and messing around. And then later we went back to my apartment and looked at what he had recorded on the video camera and just had this sort of like wow moment of this could be a video. So then we went back there. Jonathan was also working on a postcard series, and so we took a postcard. So I was doing my work with photography, and he got one of his postcards of his postcard series, and then we went back with a bunch of friends with the idea of making Dry Season the video.
It's interesting that postcard is actually poking fun at a slogan of a popular beer. Which had a really sort of sexist, really ridiculous slogan back in the 80s, which was Balboa is for men. because it was a stronger tasting beer. So it had that was actually the slogan. And there I switched it up, and because Panama is the name of of this country, but it's also the name of a beer, which is a very rare occurrence. It only happens. I think we only know of two nations that lend their name to beer brands, and that's Panama and Myanmar.
Ah.
Yeah, and we learned that I think it's Cohegan. We were doing a visit there, and one of the students was from Myanmar or Burma. I get them mixed up. And he told us, oh, in Myanmar we have also a beer that's called Myanmar, because I had been searching for another one because it's an anomaly. But anyways, I made this postcard, and then a few years later we made Drinking Song, where we revisit this theme of Panamanian beer bottle names and how they're related to Panamanian national identity,
right,
and its fragility vis-a-vis its turbulent relationship to the United States. So we'll get back to that. But
right.
it was sort of like a foreshadowing of things to come.
No, I think this collaboration also kind of draws out some of the main themes that y'all will continue to collaborate on, which is one of the fundamental ideas being these visual puns, or this kind of ambiguity that's created by double entendre and things like that. So in this video, which in English is called Dry Season, we have the empty bottles, and maybe Carla, we can see if we can play the video, which a disclaimer, we are on Instagram playing it from a computer. So it's not, if you want the full effect, you'll see it somewhere in the museum or on their Vimeo. So apologies for the sound quality and reproduction quality, but yeah, so we can kind of play it as we're talking. I don't think it'll be too loud.
There'll be some feedback.
Maybe we just play a clip for people who haven't seen it, so you get the idea of what we did, because it kind of continues. It's sort of like the idea was to create like a downpour, like a rain, but out of glass bottles onto this glass landscape.
I did.
Yeah, so that was our first collaboration, and one thing that I often sort of admit to in interviews is that I'm much more satisfied with the sound of this video than the visual component of it, although it looks pretty nice. But whenever folks get to watch it later on in our video, if they want to, or if they ever get to see it in space, they'll notice that the sound quality is really pristine. You can't hear absolutely anything except the glass breaking on the glass. There's no ambient noise. There's no car hums or hisses. So we from the very get-go in our first collaboration, we sort of focused on the quality of the sound and really worked on it, and realized that it was, if not half of the audio-visual work, I mean, it's half the word, audio-visual. It's even more so in terms of how the amount of space that it occupies and the amount of sensory input that people get from sound. We're used to, regarding the arts as the visual arts, right? And we give this predominance to everything that comes in through our eyes. But art is a lot about, the way things feel and in terms of how the tactile sense.
Right.
And sound is closely related to touch because, sound is actually touching you in sense that it travels through the air, moves airwaves, and those airwaves touch your eardrums and the inner workings of your ear. And so you get to a lot of information about the objects, their texture, their heft, the roughness or smoothness of. There's just a lot of things that are happening there that somehow synesthetically really set the mood and the atmosphere, which is so important for works of art to sort of create these worlds, these atmospheres, these moods that sort of talk to us in a way that goes, surpasses or transcends reason, and it's just another type of language. And so, but to put it shortly, we really dig the sound and get into the sound and work on it a lot. And
right.
And it was from the very beginning. I mean, it was pretty rudimentary. We had like a handmade sort of mic windsock protector thing that we made out of some hanger, a clothes hanger, and some pantyhose.
Mm-hmm.
But
on the camera mic, we used the camera mic that at that point it was a video camera, and the sound wasn't so bad. I just want to add about sound, like a lot of times I like to talk about how when we use found objects, we are exploring the sculptural possibilities, all the physical possibilities of those objects. I mean, I come from a background of sculpture, And sound is one of the physical properties of objects. So I think it connects into that idea in a way that is really important.
No,
Certain objects sound a certain way, and it gives you information about what they consist of, what they're made of.
Yeah, I think I left this out, but it's important. It's the way a sort of like a screen-based bidimensional medium like video can occupy a third dimension, a spatial dimension. It's through, it's
No, I mean, I think it's so captivating.
That's like the Buñuel film, the discrete charm of the bourgeoisie. Like the most important thing to remember about this film, and then a truck passes and you can't hear it. That was the most profound thing I'm going to say in this entire.
No, I mean, it's true. I think also as you were saying about these sounds being so linked to the nature of the object, it's also like the experience, or my experience of watching the videos is often like these sounds that we forget or don't notice are being super amplified and super, so you can kind of focus in on like the sound attached to an object that in your day-to-day life you might pass by or take for granted. We can kind of keep going through the slideshow and pull up some other work. I think the next work that's going to come through is one of the video juegos. And so there are a number of these works, but can you talk a little bit about how you kind of came to design this series? I mean, this again, another kind of visual idea here, it being a video of a game. So a video game in that sense that obviously the viewer is not playing, but is watching being played. What was kind of the thinking behind this series?
A couple things I think important to mention. After we did dry season, we made another video called Summer Breeze, and we didn't have solidified in our minds really that we were going to keep collaborating. I mean, the first one was an accident. The second one was a fun follow-up. And then when we started making the video games, it was pretty clear to us that they needed to be a series. There needed to be several games. We wanted to make this arcade where it would be full of these sounds that the objects made. And we were collaborating. This was a thing, and we were going to keep doing it. We were enjoying it. We were enjoying the work we were making. And to me, one of the most important things about the video juegos was that moment when we said, this is something we're doing. So at that time, Panama City was really undergoing a huge, rapid, drastic, horrific transformation. There was wild real estate speculation going on, and construction in the city with no urban planning. The city was going from buildings with 4 or 5 stories to buildings with 30 or 40 stories really quickly without making the infrastructure to support it. So we were seeing this dizzying transformation in front of our eyes, and we were really worried about it. We were mad about it. I moved neighborhoods because of it. And it was all around us. And so we were spending time in these neighborhoods that were transforming from old, beautiful houses into not at all beautiful or architecturally interesting high-rises. And we just started going into these, still get into where houses were being demolished, and we started collecting stuff. We started picking things up and taking them home, and they became the pieces that we played games with. The very, very, very first game was played at the edges of the Panama Canal, where you can't access now. But Jonathan was at a party at somebody's house who lived in one of these old boat houses. The backyard was basically the canal. Actually with Adan Vallecillo, hello Adan, and they called me and said, there's these bricks that look like letters, like this is cool, this is something. And then Jonathan and I went back there, and that was the first of the video games. And then
we didn't know it was going to be the first of many at that point, but
after we made one, maybe after we made two, it's like this needs to be a few for it to really take on some credible.
Yeah, we made the second one with those same bricks, and then started sort of thinking about these weathered objects, the beauty of worn or weathered objects, and what they said about the human condition, about about the society that produced them, and it talks sort of about, you know, our impermanence in the world, and this sort of battle they're always waging against entropy, and in a more general universal sense. And then some of the pieces that we started to find in these demolished houses made direct references to this building construction boom, and all that frenzied real estate speculation, and financial sort of skullduggery. Skullduggery a word? Yeah. I don't know if it's the correct word, but it's a word. Anyways, but it's like this, all these shenanigans, you know, that these pyramid schemes, and this like quick buck sort of mentality, right? That sort of doesn't put, you know, like social issues or environmental concerns into the equation. It's just like, we want money now, and we want it all for ourselves, and fuck everything else, right? So we started finding like beautiful pieces of mosaics in demolished houses, and like that sort of were built in the 40s, so they had sort of this the quality of the building materials and the finishes was really high, and they sort of seemed like pieces of puzzles or games, and we started sort of inventing these games to play on these videos, and we would choreograph sort of the play. And we realized pretty quickly that if the video, if the game was fun to play or improvise, to pretend to play, then it made it for a good video. And if we sort of got bored with our made up game, it wasn't interesting because, you know, it was just sort of forced or felt sort of off in some way.
Right.
It usually meant that the video, watching the video or the video itself, would be sort of boring or a dead end. And of course, we were you know, keen on recording good sound, so we had to find these places. This is before we started hiring people to help us with booms and dedicated sound equipment. So we had to find places in the city that were relatively quiet, and we quickly discovered that doesn't really exist. There's never like absolutely quiet. There's always a dog barking or an old lady screaming about her laundry getting wet in the rain or whatever. Yeah. But since we were thinking about sound, it sort of made us like visit and explore parts of the city where we normally wouldn't go. And since some of the most quiet neighborhoods are in the former Canal Zone, and Donna, I don't know if you had moved there by that time, a lot of it started taking place there. So that was sort of I guess it wasn't coincidence, but it was sort of collateral occurrence, I guess. So yeah, those are the video games, and they're made to be exhibited together. They also function like in pairs or in threes. And some are about competition, so where we're openly like sort of having feuds or disputes or like even violent conflicts. Some are about collaboration, and where we're sort of building things together or playing off of each other. And it's really quite interesting because we realized when we watched people watching them that there was layers of signification that were derived just from the physicality of our hands. I have like white guy hands, and Donna has brown woman hands, and people started interpreting that, and we can't escape from that. It's so it's part of who we are. So we said, well, these meanings are going to be in here. Next time we put our hands in it, we should take that into consideration and work that into the narrative somehow. And that there's really good examples of that in Invisible Hands, where sort of the power structures are aligned in such a way as to comment on like white guy hands and what white guy hands have been doing throughout history, versus brown or black skin female hands, and so forth. Sort of these archetypes, how they align with how power structures are aligned along these archetypes, right?
Right.
So yeah, so the hands start to appear a lot, right? And right from the very beginning. So as stand-ins for ourselves, but also stand-ins for the rest of humanity. But like they're not universal. I mean,
right.
They're infused with ideological like stuff.
Yeah. Donna, did
I
you have
just,
something to add?
yeah, I just wanted to say that the video that was playing on the fourth screen, one of the video games, is a sort of a weird hybrid backwards flag. So when we found the piece of mosaic with the stars on it, it was like, oh, this is like references almost the United States flag, but it's backwards. And so that inspired the idea of using other tiles to make this sort of hybrid Panamanian United States flag, which kind of has some bearing on this show. The text that Marina wrote and some of the ideas about cultural extractivism from more powerful countries, et cetera. And so, and then there's another video in here. I'm sure you want to get on to the next thing besides Video Juegos, but the other one we sent you is one of the competitive videos that Jonathan was referring to. This one was sort of a collaboration to make this hybrid flag. But then there's one where we're having a conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that about Marina's text, and well, the sort of the main themes of Tropical is Political is that when this building speculation and this frenzied real estate boom was occurring in Panama, a lot of the money and a lot of the investors were coming from Spain.
Right.
So it was sort of the Spaniards once again like sacking, like the Spaniards sacking and looting and pillaging this little corner of the planet.
Right.
Of course, it's not all of the Spanish. It's like the Spanish elites, right? Because they were also sacking their own peoples, and they had like sort of a collapse in 2008, like a real estate fueled financial collapse in 2008, along with the United States. But it's this sort of extractivist, sort of parasitical, colonizing monster that sort of Marina is really focused on with her visitor economy theories, and so we've sort of been talking about these things for a while now because it's sort of right. It's happening all the time in our backyard.
Right.
Yeah, it's no mistake there are 3 Panamanian artists in this show, I think.
No, it's true. I mean, and so maybe in that sense, we can skip ahead in the PowerPoint to Manos Invisibles, or Invisible Hands, which is one of the works that's in our current exhibition. So again, if you're in New York, please stop by to come see it in person. But this video, I think it touches on a lot of the themes that we're talking about already. And also from a structural point of view, it has this kind of focused action that is meant to represent a lot of different layers of signification. For those who aren't familiar with the video, could you explain a little bit the specific currency that you're utilizing in this video and some of the meanings that it holds?
The specific currency is a made-up currency, basically. It's in Panama, the currency is the United States dollar. One of the reasons that Panama is so attractive to international companies, multinational companies, and to the tourist economy is because a lot of people speak English and because we have a dollar-based economy. So the dollar-based economy and the lack of armed political conflict for the most part makes it a really stable, relatively stable country. So we have a dollar-based economy, but there are, in addition to the paper money that's circulating, that's United States money, there are coins that have been minted to be Panamanian versions of dollar coins, and they're called balboas. So Balboa, Vasco Núñez de Balboa was the Spanish conquistador, and he has become, oddly enough, a cultural icon in Panama, and his head with the conqueror's helmet is on our quarters, for example. And so there's these analog parallel coins that are actually like U.S. coins, but they're Panamanian.
They're like euros, actually. They're more like euros.
So we had this extremely corrupt president, Ricardo Martinelli, who ended up in jail for embezzlement. Yes, that's the quarter. That's the quarter of a Balboa. And Martinelli was pretty darn full of himself in many ways. But one of the things he decided to do was to coin a new version of the Balboa dollar and make a dollar coin, which didn't exist before. But they just started producing these by the hundreds of thousands, and it wasn't like they retrieved dollars. Although economists have told me this is legitimate, it's basically what we do with credit card money. They didn't retrieve the dollars; they simply inserted into the economy tens of thousands of these. The first issue was $40,000, and then they made more of these. One Balboa coins, which everybody right away started calling them Martinellis, because it was his presidency who did that. And they're hilarious in a way, because here was Martinelli, this corrupt politician who was keeping huge margins of all of the public works projects that he was doing all over town for himself. And he made this money which you couldn't spend anywhere else. You couldn't trade in casas de cambio. You couldn't take your Martinellis and go to another country and trade them for the currency. They didn't exist anywhere else. They only existed in Panama. So they were like Panamanian fake money, monopoly money. People started collecting them and keeping them right away because they were novelty, and they were shiny and wonderful. And then they started tarnishing immediately because they had been made really cheaply. So then everybody just wanted to get rid of them. And so the Martinelli at first, like for a eye blink, was sort of this cool thing, and then everybody started making fun of it. They were heady. Who wants to have heady money? It's only $1, et cetera. So then we couldn't resist, right? Here's this funny money, and money, of course, is symbolic anyway. It stands for, economic power. It stands for power. It stands for exchange. And so we just started scripting a video to include as many of those kind of significances that currency could have. And then also just this materials exploration, right? We started trying to see what all can we do with these coins. So it starts with a magician making the coins appear.
Out of nothing, out of nowhere.
Sort of play with the idea of the construct that money is, that currency is. This is a little clip of the dynamics between our hands along the length of the video. Sort of go that I get this magic money from the magician and save it away and put it in my piggy bank, and then Jonathan's hands come along and crush my piggy bank. My hands end up cleaning up the mess, and then he, in that scene right there that we saw, scoops up all this money and starts controlling it, stacking it, keeping it.
And maybe we have a still of the gloved hands we can show too, that are also a part of this.
So after this, he basically loans me a little.
Loans her back her own money.
The money that I had saved in the piggy bank that he gathers up and makes in these little stacks and keeps. He gives me one little stack, but I have to sign a piece of paper, and so we're just really kind of poking fun with all of the possible power dynamics of.
Yeah, so my hands could represent sort of the World Bank or the FMI, que es. What is FMI is Fondo Mundial Internacional, yeah, the International Monetary Fund.
Mm-hmm.
IMF, and then sort of these sort of supranational, secretive, mega powerful entities that can, make or break nations or entire continents, such enormous power, and are really unaccountable. I mean, nobody elects these people into their positions.
Yeah.
And they sort of there's revolving doors between them and many of the top tier corporations, and I don't want to sound like like one of those conspiracy Illuminati type of freaks, but it's the people that are up in the upper echelons of power, they hang out a lot, and they might seem like they have opposing views or ideologies publicly, but they go to the same country clubs, and their kids hang out, and they have the same values and aspirations, and eat the same level, same brand caviar. I don't know. And they're not, they don't, their hands look more like mine than they do Donna's for the most part. So I mean, I just have to play those roles whenever I use my hands and we're dealing with these things. It would be foolish to try and go against that. But I mean, part of it, this whole thing is that approaching these really like convoluted or dense or serious themes with humor and with wit and with playfulness, in a way that anyone can understand them and enjoy them. And there's different levels, so you don't really have to have read. It's not necessary to have read Leviathan or Adam Smith to enjoy that video, because kids watch it and they just like shiny objects flying through the air or towers crashing down. Everybody's made a tower of coins or Jenga or something. Enjoyed bringing it down. So we sort of try to make our videos sort of function on these different levels, sort of the more primal, like reptilian sort of jouissance inspired type levels, and then the more like cerebral and analytical ones as well, but sort of try to make it seamless. And a lot of times we're not really trying to do that. It just sort of happens,
right?
Because I don't know, the way we work, the sensibility we have, and because we work well together.
So I'd like to say something actually about the local translating to the global, and this is a good example of that. I mean, I think that it happens time and time again, and I think it's a good it's a good way for artists to think in general. Like, you work from what you know, right? You work from what you know personally, what you know from right around you, and then it ends up translating in other places. And I think that, Martinelli's, for example, when somebody sees this video in another country, they won't necessarily know the context of Ricardo Martinelli. They won't know about the false nature of these specific coins, but they still understand a lot of the levels of the video, and they just apply it to their context.
Right.
I mean, Efecto Domino, for example, it's not part of this presentation, but you can see it on our Vimeo. It's a video we've shown in a bunch of different cities, and every single time people say, that's just like here. And we didn't know that when we were making it. But I think in general, if you sort of have that approach of exploring your context in the most genuine, honest way that you can, then you do end up reaching other people in other contexts, other cultures, other cities. So.
No, and I think what y'all are talking about also relates to a little bit of the discussion we've had about this idea of cropping that is present in a lot of your videos. Like, the camera is always very tight on the action that's happening. Obviously and maybe with this one, in interest of time, we can go forward to Bajo la Alfombra, which is the other work that's in our current show. But because that video is a little different, it uses your whole bodies. But in general, it still applies that kind of hyper tight focus. And so in a way, it increases, to my view, watching it, it increases almost the ambiguity level of some things, because you're not even getting like a full setting or a scene to set up where this is. You're really hyper focusing on the action, the sound being a huge part of that, and then all the possible meanings or significations of that action. And so in this video here, I know you guys can talk a little bit more about some of the meanings there, but I wonder too if you could speak to some of this idea about creating this kind of narrative focus in the videos through how the camera is positioned and what it kind of focuses on.
Absolutely. The camera is a way of showing you specifically what we want you to see. So it's a way of creating a world within that screen that only has the elements that are important. And so in Bajo la Alfombra, the elements that are important are this grass that turns into this hill shape, and the brooms, and the people. Sometimes you only see the feet or the hands as that action is important, and the garbage. So, I mean, actually, Bajo la Alfombra has a lot of elements. It's got the fake sky and the fake wind and all this stuff.
That's true. But it was a bad question as we transition to this video.
No, it's okay. But it's a good question in general, because we do try to create these worlds made of just the elements visually and sonically that we want to use to try and point to a particular narrative, a particular story. So, when we show them where we filmed these things, especially the ones that happened in situ, it's always crazy because there's always this background chaos, but the specific world of the video is created through the framing and through the sound. And so, yeah, I mean, if you've got a camera, you got to use it.
No, it's true. And also it makes me think that maybe in Bajo La Alfombra, because the concepts and some of the ideas that are referenced are more about cultural memory, national memory and forgetting, that this kind of backdrop of like using the land and then like a sky backdrop is also kind of referencing landscape, like in this like, more sort of, you're creating a false setting of landscape. If you're following what I'm saying.
Just like we create false histories.
Yeah.
It's just like we create false histories. So that was the idea. Everything is fake. The flag is plastic. The wind is made by a fan.
The grass is real.
The trash is real.
The grass too.
The grass is real.
Originally, we were thinking about using synthetic grass, but we decided that real grass and the earthy, the dirt that it would have to be sort of it had to grow out of. So the land is the earth, la tierra. So in Spanish, the tierra is also like your nation, your homeland, right? So it has sort of this special sort of meaning to it, or a layered meaning to it. I was thinking that the tight framing in our videos is, yes, we want to show you certain things, and we don't want to get people. We don't want people to get distracted with stuff that doesn't have any pertinence or anything like that. And it's just a way of abstracting things. It's sort of finding an in between. It's a very figurative medium, video. We're telling stories. I mean, they're not typical stories. They're somewhat experimental, and the protagonists are usually objects, and we're sort of just. So sometimes we're absent, or we're just sort of on the sidelines, or we maybe like sort of give them a little push here and there, or manipulate them. But the actual protagonists of these narratives are objects, the objects. But they're sort of also abstracted in the sense that these places don't really exist. They're sort of surreal or dreamlike because you eliminate. Everything except just the few elements that have a sort of a thematic and a formal and a conceptual consequence, right? And we do that with the sound as well. So you don't hear anything that might be a distraction or might create noise or but doesn't really add anything to what we're trying to say, and it sort of it just creates these sort of very sort of surreal, outlandish moods, because of the domino effect occurs in one of the most touristic visited districts or neighborhoods of Panama City. Mm-hmm. But the way we portrayed it, there's no people in it. There's no moving cars. I mean, there's maybe some bird noises, but all you can hear is the bricks. And right away, that creates sort of a very unreal or surreal sort of mood, because it's the old quarter as you've never experienced it before. Not even on a Sunday, or especially on Sundays, it's one of the most. There's more pedestrian traffic. There's more people actually. In order to sort of feel that, you would have to go at like 4 a.m, mm-hmm. but this is in daytime. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of the way, maybe what's the surrealist painting? Empire of Light. The guy with the bowler hats. Magritte.
Yes.
Magritte plays these things where you're seeing sort of scenes. You're experiencing scenes where it's daylight and nighttime at the same time, and that makes it surreal. Right. Well, maybe Efecto Domino has that, where you're experiencing the old quarter as if it was 4 a.m. and it's completely quiet, and you also add the element of the bricks, but it's daytime and it's still empty, there's no traffic, there's no nothing. So it's sort of something's off. And maybe you can't put your finger on it right away. But I think that's a lot of what creates that sort of dreamlike atmosphere.
Right.
So it's not that we mean to do that, but we do want people to focus on a certain thing. And when we eliminate everything else, we immediately create this new world that maybe you've known in a different version, but this is sort of like a parallel dimension that we create, and sort of you experience it in a way that you never have. And I think that's very, it can be thought provoking, and it can be very, and also sort of, it can be very moving also.
Yeah. I wonder.
So,
go ahead, Donna.
I was just going to say, I realized I interrupted you before, and I was going to try to hand you back the mic. I'm sorry.
No, please. We're here to listen to you and Jonathan, so please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I interrupted you before. I'm sorry, but sometimes we get all excited.
No, did I? I did that too. Did I? I probably did. I'm sorry. Just in case.
No, Donna, did you want to add something? By all means, please.
No, I was just acknowledging that I stepped on your words, and yeah.
There's an interesting view of sort of the studio setting where we shot under the rug, bajo la alfombra, and we shot this completely in a studio. So, and with like professional equipment, and we had sort of hired a professional crew, and the studio was sort of, we got a discount, it was free, but there wasn't much time to sort of make mistakes and sort of not be clear about what we wanted to shoot and how we wanted to shoot it. So we did our homework, and we made a complete sort of what we call sort of a video storyboard. We shot the video from beginning to end exactly as it is in the final version, but in my backyard. Well, we're wearing flip-flops, and we're using old brooms, but it's shot in exactly the same way. So when we went into the studio, we knew exactly what shots we wanted, what angles we wanted them from, what the sequence was going to be, and it was sort of just plug and play. And sometimes we work that way in sort of a very precise and exhaustive sort of organized way. And sometimes other videos we've shot with a lot more room for improvisation, for spontaneity. I mean, there's always things that happen spur of the moment that are happy accidents, or that you have to sort of, or not so happy accidents that you have to figure out a solution for somehow. But depending on each project, that varies. Efecto Dominó was pretty well thought out as well. Yeah. We had a very exhaustive and complete storyboard for that one, because there was shooting in public, especially in a place that has so much pedestrian traffic and so much activity during the day. It's very difficult. You have to sort of ask people to please stop what they're doing when we're shooting. But people got into it because everybody enjoyed watching us set up these domino chains with these bricks, and seeing if we could sort of, the domino chain would make it, from beginning to end, the domino effect, the collapsing of it would work or not. So people were happy to collaborate in that sense, but we had to stop traffic and everything.
Yeah,
it was a lot of work.
I mean, in hearing both of you talk about this, it also makes me think about this idea of like uncanniness, or defamiliarizing certain objects by stripping down a lot of the noise. And then, so it's also that you're encountering something that's very familiar, but maybe contemplating, new meanings to it in the context of watching the film. But one question I have been asking to close out the series is also to refer back to the exhibition, as we touched on before. But what does the phrase tropical is political mean to both of you? I don't know if Donna, you want to jump in on this one if you have an answer, but that's the title of our show, and it's a very potent phrase, so I was wondering what y'all thought about that.
It is a very potent phrase. I think, like, if you aren't from the tropics, or if you haven't spent a significant amount of time living in the tropics, the words tropical and tropics sound like vacation. They sound like sitting by a pool, by a beach, with a nice drink with a little paper umbrella in it, But if you're from the tropics, or if you live in the tropics, that whole reading is really about cultural extractivism. And And so I think, I think just even the word and the connotation that we know so many people get from the word. You know, the tropics are sort of like the rainforest, right? It's like so much of the powerful part of the world sees it as a place you can go, beautiful, and then you go back home. And usually you're taking something with you. And I don't mean necessarily individuals, although that's true also, but I mean, in Panama, we have open pit copper mines, and those are owned by countries that exist elsewhere. The materials go elsewhere. The money goes elsewhere, and what's left behind is both environmental and cultural destruction, and that happens all the time. I mean, I think that there's a lot of connections between Puerto Rico. I mean, Puerto Rico and Panama, in that the culprit a lot of times has been the United States, the rest of the United States in terms of Puerto Rico, the United States in terms of Panama. But they're really signifiers for what goes on all over the tropics, where the powerful and the powerful nations come and take and leave very little behind. And the tropics are incredibly rich with biodiversity. They're rich with minerals, they're rich with culture, and it's largely appreciated by other cultures on a sort of tourist level or an economic extraction level. And so that's what I mean, it sparks all of that stuff for me. And coming from, I'm from the United States, and I've lived half of my life in Panama, and I feel like I'm constantly looking through the whole thing, you know, through like a lupa, like a magnifying glass.
Right. Right. Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with
that.
Yeah, I agree with Donna and everything she just said. I mean, I can try and put it more succinctly. I mean, politics is about power relations and how it's distributed, and the word tropical in itself, sort of the way it's used and it's been used historically. I mean, the people that live here before, you know, the Europeans got here didn't call this the tropics. I mean, it's a Latin word, it's a Western word, and so, you know, when you name something, you sort of claim power over it. I mean, that's what entitlement is all about, and why land has to be titled, and why artists, you know, sometimes feel weird about, you know, curators naming their works. Sometimes, I mean, naming something, you know, you name your child, and it's like a claim, right? So, and that's why place names are important. And so, you know, if there's a place name that has an indigenous name here in Panama, but the European name is the one that's widely used, that's all about power relationships. So the word tropical is political in the sense that as a word, it already has this sort of political ideology, and it's all this baggage, this historical baggage about how power has been distributed, how it has been hoarded, and how it has been denied to many people. It's already sort of, it's like a hyper icon. It's like if you click on the word tropical, it opens up a whole bunch of windows.
Right.
And some of those windows could be considered some of the works in this exhibition.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it, and they rhyme, so it's really catchy.
Yeah. Well, I want to be mindful of time. We're almost at 6 p.m.
Okay.
And I just want to super thank both of you for joining us. I could keep talking for hours more about your work, but it's been a real pleasure getting to hear more about some of your
Yeah, there's like a 40-minute limit, right? Or an hour limit.
Yes, exactly.
How close are we? Is it going to end like in 2 seconds? Or?
Yeah, we might get cut off. So thank you to both of you, and thank you to Marina Reyes Franco.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you to everybody that weathered the all 7 people who tuned in.
We appreciate y'all. Bye.
Yeah, we had a mass migration when they were like, "No, Donna, I'm out. I don't want to see Jonathan on his own."
All right, I'll sign out now. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.